We as bass fishermen, we love to throw crankbaits. But do we pick a crankbait up in the fall all the time? Let's talk about it. Hey guys, Ryan here at Fish North Georgia, and crankbait fishing in the fall is something that can be highly addictive. Okay, let's just be flat out honest with you. There's probably many of you that are watching this video right now that a crankbait is laying on the deck of your boat. It is October here in North Georgia. Crankbait is probably going to be laying on the deck of your boat. This past weekend, I fished. I caught a lot of fish on a crankbait. I caught a lot of fish real shallow on a crankbait. Okay, so let's talk about crankbait fishing in the fall. I really have two trains of thought with crankbait fishing in the fall. We are either throwing bait fish looking ones, just like this one right here, this Rapala DT6, or crawfish colored ones, just like this one right here, and this Delta Craw in a DT8. Okay, I keep it, 6-foot range all the way up to 10-foot range. I really like the Rapala DT series is in the fall. Okay, the reason why I like those is because they actually come off cover, especially rocks. They come off them really well. A DT6, for example, you can throw a DT6 up there in 2-3 foot of water, and you can crank that thing all the way back to the boat at a good steady retrieve, and it won't get hung up. Okay, they work really well. The other thing too with all of these that I have sitting here in my hand, especially with the Rapala versions, is they throw a long way. Casting distance and getting a lot of distance on your cast in the fall, to me, is extremely important. You've probably heard me say that before. To me, I want to cover as much water as I can. I want my bait as wet from the cast back to the boat, and I want there to be a lot of distance between my cast back to the boat. I want to cover as much of the water column and as much as I can. A lot of the fishing that we do with crankbaits in the fall, we do lots of 45ing and paralleling the banks. Okay, anywhere, especially in the backs of pockets where they have bait schooled up, crankbaits will really work really well. You can basically get out there on the back of a flat that might be in the back of a pocket that they have bait hemmed up in the back of them in big balls, and you can see fish that actually physically like busting on them and chasing that bait. They will come up and they will bust that bait, and then they will go right back down to the bottom. They may be in 5-6 feet of water though, so it's really not that deep, but they will come up, they will bust that bait, and then they will go down, and they will just basically chase these bait balls around. Taking a crankbait and fan casting around and making a bunch of casts and kind of burning a crankbait almost back, giving it some stops here and there, you're basically imitating that bait fish that they're back there feeding on. Okay, trying to look like a little bitty bait fish, has got away from the major school, he's out there all alone. We all know that when a bait fish gets away from the school that it is in, it doesn't last very long. A bass finds it and he eats it, and he has himself part of his meal. Being in the fall, they're gorging themselves on bait fish and on shad. This crankbait, you can find an area or a pattern with the crankbait that you can really dial in throughout the day. Say for example, they are on the insides of these points going into the mouths of major creeks. They've got a bait ball out there on the point, and they're kind of keeping tabs on it, and they're keeping up with it. Crankbait comes by, and one of them in that school will decide that I need to get it, and they'll come choke that crankbait. They will choke that crankbait. These Rapalas, the DT6 through DT10 series, I primarily throw the DT6s through the DT8s. I will throw an occasional DT10 depending upon how deep it is, but the DT6s and the DT8s, you can throw them pretty much anywhere and they will work absolutely fantastic for you. Crankbaits are loud. Crankbaits mimic bait fish. They also deflect off cover. They're by far one of my favorite baits to use when trying to provoke a reaction strike. They can't help it. They have to bite it. When it comes by them, they'll chase it down and they got to grab it. So lots of fun with the crankbait. Rod reel line that I'm using to throw crankbaits on, no matter where I'm going. 7'4", medium heavy, moderate action rod. 5:4-to-1 gear ratio, Abu Garcia reel, and I throw strictly 10-pound test line. I like fluorocarbon preferably. There is some instances where I'll crank with mono, but very rarely do I crank with mono anymore. I primarily crank with fluorocarbon. If you like mono and you have success with mono and you feel good about mono, by all means, go with the mono. I'm not going to tell you to do otherwise, but I do like 10-pound test. It makes these baits go to where they need to go, okay? Crankbait dies to 8 foot with 10-pound test line on a good cast. She's going to go 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot, so on and so forth. So we're looking for bait fish with the crankbait. The last thing in terms of with the other color, we're talking about that red one right there, for example, is crawfish. Crawfish come out into the fall, they get to moving around, they will feed on them. We like a jig bite in the fall. This is the same thing going on right here with this one. Throwing reds, oranges, anything, but we're throwing them shallow, we're throwing them around rocks, we're throwing them around, don't be scared to throw them right here. Throwing them in blowdowns and in trees, you will provoke strikes out of those. Don't be scared to throw a crankbait in a tree. Don't be scared to throw one across the limbs of a tree. You'll be surprised what'll happen if you throw a crankbait in there and you bang along those limbs. It is loud, as I said earlier, it makes a lot of noise, and it provokes a reaction strike. And sometimes those fish, they won't do nothing, they don't want to feed, but if a crankbait comes through the limbs of a tree, they'll do nothing but come out and absolutely annihilate it for you. So crawfish in the fall, typically they're turning into this reddish brown color no matter where we're going. They will stay that color, of course, through into the early part of spring. This Delta color is a real natural color in the Rapala series. The Demon color is another good one, but in the fall, I stick for the more natural red colors. This one looks a lot like a crawfish that I had spit up last weekend when we were fishing. A couple other guys had them too in their boats, and they were showing them to me. So bear that in mind. Again, what you see with your eyes is always important, and that is something that you can utilize to catch fish and to put more fish in the boat. So bait fish colored crankbaits, anything that dives down from 6 feet all the way down to about 10 feet, and then crawdad color crankbaits on rocky points, blowdowns, laydowns, wood, anywhere like that, red clay banks. Crankbaits work. Figure out what exactly they're feeding on, the fish in the area that you're fishing at. Tie on with whatever one that it is that they're feeding on, that you visibly see them feeding on. It's no wrong reason there to have 2 of them laying there. 2 different rods with 2 different crankbaits, and throw them. Burn them, stop them, bang them in everything you can. You'll catch a lot of fish, and you'll have a lot of fun, and you'll catch the big fish as well. If you like this content, hit that like and subscribe button, click that notification bell for more.